Welcome to Clothing Culture, a fashion industry podcast at the intersection of technology and innovation. I'm Emily Lane.
And I'm Bret Schnitker. We speak with experts and disruptors who are moving the industry forward
And discuss solutions to real industry challenges.
Clothing Culture is brought to you by Stars Design Group, a global design and production house with more than 30 years of experience.
Welcome back to another episode of Clothing Culture. Today, this isn't just another episode of Clothing Culture. This is, in fact, our season wrap. Is that not the biggest surprise that here we are at the end of season 2? I am joined by CEO of Stars Design Group, Bret Schnitker, and we are located at the home office. Welcome, Bret.
Hi, Em.
So today, we have talked about many things that have impacted our industry throughout this season and the season before us. And, we're always looking forward to see what's next. This industry, it's a global business, as we have talked about, and Stars Design Group, we're certainly a global company. So we're always taking a look at what's happening, events, world dynamics, all the things that can impact our future. And so today, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to take a look at what's happening in the world and discuss about some of those future impacts. And then, of course, lay some groundwork for what you can experience in season 3. So, Bret, one of the things that's a part of a daily conversation at Stars is COGS. Inflation. What is happening in our world right now?
Yeah, COGS is really abbreviation for cost of goods, but like every good end of season show, there should be a cliffhanger, and I would say the world is a giant cliffhanger today. There's so many things where everyone's like, what is going to happen next? Mm-hmm. And as we take a break in between the two seasons, hopefully some of those things will get ironed out. When we're referencing cost of goods, certainly raw materials come up a lot. Mm-hmm. And we've, in addition to all the other stressors that have been on our supply chain, raw materials have certainly been one of them. Specifically, cotton has been a big one of note. A comfortable range for cotton is in the 50 to 60 cents a pound range. And we've seen prices as high as $1.50 a pound, almost 3 times that level. And for really no major apparent reason. Usually we can tie those heavy surges to crop failures, droughts, things like that. And I would say in general, I'm sure that there's ways to justify those price increases, but it's more complex than I've ever seen. Today we're trading closer to $1 per pound, as we record this episode. So it seems like it's stabilizing somewhat. But, when you combine all of that, all of the other rising costs that are impacting our cost of goods, our, the profitability tables for organizations around the world, the end result really is inflation that we're seeing in our industry overall, inflationary challenges. And I think we're hovering around 8% as a nation, but certainly I think our industry specifically is seeing higher inflationary rates than that. Some people are saying it's up to 14%. Whether that all gets passed along to the consumer is questionable. There's there's been a number of polls on that, where they think certain things will hit, but that certainly is a big challenge and something that we'll weigh into, as we start to see more layers of that onion unpeel in the next season.
Right, definitely something for companies to be considering with regards to budgets and understanding that, that those inflationary costs hit on a lot of levels. It's not just your cost of materials, but of course in every aspect of doing business anymore.
Yeah, they certainly do, but I think one of the things that's been benefiting the industry in general is that demand again exceeds supply. People are struggling with getting supply. And within that, the heavily discounting is going away. Mm-hmm. Some of our customers are even talking about 70%, 80% regular price, that the days of rapid discounting to 50% off are kind of things of the past.
Right.
So that's a benefit, because with that rising cost, if you're not if you're not building your costs knowing you're going to discount heavily, all of a sudden you've got a little bit of buffer there to maintain profitability.
You're making an excellent transition there, because I did want to make sure that we talked about inventory and how that currently has been disrupted, of course, with some of the conversations we've had regarding supply chain, delays in logistics, all of those things that we all know about, because we've definitely had a regular conversation around these topics. But how people are responding to the inventory flow is, if people are making individual decisions. As you mentioned, some are, not doing the deep discounts anymore. Some are holding their inventory because it's come in maybe too late to be appropriate for the season, or they're behind the season, so they're holding on to it for the next time it's season relevant. Some are doing deep discounts. What are other actions that you're seeing, Bret?
Well, certainly, in a better business and a smaller, better business, it allows them to be more nimble, absorb air freight costs if necessary to get around those things. And that, I think that from an inventory perspective, they can stay more on time in that regard. I think that the people that are experiencing really large challenges are the ones that are buying very, very deep, very, very large, because places in the world to produce those large quantities, again, everyone's scrambling for the same resource. Mm-hmm. So if you've got yourself a giant manufacturing organization, I would say that they're heavily challenged for supply chain. So I would say some of their answers is that they consistently are dealing with late deliveries. You get in the middle of a cycle, you're booking at a certain time, supply chain, demand exceeds supply, or there's shutdowns like what occurred in China this year, again, in Shanghai and other provinces for a week or 2 weeks, in some places maybe longer. Those things break that cycle of production, therefore goods are coming in late. And so decisions are being made, if it's a seasonal product, to hold it or deeply discount it and just kind of move through it, deal with the pain. But with rising costs, that's a pretty painful decision to make.
Right. It's a long time to hold inventory and a lot of time to take up space in a warehouse.
Absolutely. So some people are actually migrating to seasonless or less seasonal items, more basics, because if things fall in a little bit later, they can still get them on the floor. And, the big, I don't know if it's a secret, but, the big untold thing to the masses in our industry is, even though we talk a lot about fashion and fad and trend and the latest, greatest item, if you look at our industry as a whole, 40 to 60% are really basics. Right. And so doing nice basics, managing through those in inventory helps the customer buffer from late deliveries. And, it certainly doesn't help out of stock on the floor. If you have nothing to sell, or you have too little to sell, or sizes are broken, you're going to start dealing with some revenue and profitability challenges. But there are ways to make sure that when the inventory does come in, that you're not forced to liquidate as much. Now, that's certainly with every portfolio of product, you've still got to have fashion items. Usually they should, especially nowadays, they should be bought a little bit tighter, so you're really planning a sellout. Price points could be a little bit higher if the style is particularly hot in terms of a trend, and that might help you, make decisions on air freight. It is a unique landscape, and inventory management is super critical. I would say that more than ever, planning is important. Understanding that reacting to business is always an important function, but timing more than ever before for that reaction is a component that you've got to place into it. And we talked about in previous episodes, people are scrambling to look south, to look for nearshoring opportunities, thinking that they can react better. That's certainly possible in some categories, but it's not possible when you swing the pendulum across all categories.
And even that, to make that transition to the south, requires planning.
Certainly. And then
it's not something
supply
you can turn on
exceeds
tomorrow.
demand, and the south slows down. And even though you got shorter lead times, production lead times go out. And, it's just, we're in a very complicated landscape with that respect.
Planning. And I do love that point, Bret, of back to basics. it's a conversation we have all of the time with our
Because
clients.
I always wear my black T-shirt, the same
right.
T-shirt all the time. Yeah, yeah.
Something that we are.
This is black to basics. So
I'm supporting your Black to Basics today too. So
great.
Something else that we're seeing a massive shift towards performance brands. We're seeing a rise in performance brands and performance clothing. And I think this is supported by several different aspects. More people have returned to the outdoors. And so a need for clothing to support the actions, be it mountain climbing or biking or whatever sport they're getting into.
I think even couch surfing, people want performance
That's
material because they don't want to
true.
iron it. So I think it's more about easy care too.
Yeah. So, which is leading to new desires in fabrications that can support whatever that action is, from sofa to surf. And then, of course, there's the other layer of the conversation, which is making it even more complicated, the circularity aspect of sustainability and so forth. There's a lot happening in this performance space.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, again, previous episodes, one of the main things that I'm hopeful for the future is that we have more and more getting involved in, bio-friendly performance fibers and materials, eco-friendly, biodegradability. There's a lot of really exciting conversation happening. The biggest challenge is we have yet to see a single product like that become mass scale
Right.
and affordable. And so, that's an ongoing conversation. I'm really hopeful that some of the 10 largest poly companies will embrace an article and drive that home. The world certainly needs that. The environment needs it. 65% of our business in apparel is done in synthetics today. So it's the number one focus that we have. And there's a lot of exciting things that are going on that are addressing, the larger conversation about eco-friendly. Sustainability is certainly one deal, the circularity, but eco-friendly, carbon, purity of air, our landfills are getting filled and things aren't breaking down. So I think, the larger conversation, we have a lot of work to do in that area. And hopefully next season we'll dive into some new technologies and then in time we'll see some mass adoption.
That's true. And it is also complicated because just because you are able to check one box in the sustainability portfolio, it can mean that you're compromising another box. And so navigating that and really picking the areas that you feel you can adopt and that you particularly are passionate about and having a plan around that, I believe is an important place to start.
Yeah, and depending on where you're positioning your brand, I think people are more receptive or less receptive to those decisions today.
One of the key issues that a lot of our retail friends have expressed in this last year is, of course, the dynamic shift in e-com. Customer acquisition, the cost of customer acquisition is way up due to some of the iOS updates. It's getting more and more difficult for people to reach their right audience and show the right product to that right audience. And so there's some really great technologies that have hit the market recently to address some of that. I think there's probably some wonderful evolutions that our good friends at XGen will be developing as well to continue to improve the user experience. But let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think, we are seeing e-commerce and its challenges. Even firsthand working with clients, we're seeing, I don't think they're prepared for the cost of customer acquisition today. Mm-hmm. It is a monumental cost. And people think, I'm going to open an online brand and go for it. And that's just, there's a lot of noise online and a lot of people competing for that space. And with all the changes you've mentioned, there are certainly technologies that we have worked with that I think are efficient based upon input financially up front to help brands grow in that space, but really understanding how expensive those are, what kind of investments in those spaces are necessary.
What kind of volume you really need to be going through to be able to afford to implement it, and it makes sense for your
because
business.
those numbers are sometimes shocking.
Yeah.
I mean, they really are, and they can't be turned on and turned off. It's like you're in the machine, so you're going to have to invest for a while. And so there's certainly technologies, much like you've mentioned with XGen, that are incorporating machine learning and AI and some customization, and that's exciting, I think, and that's a cookieless environment.
I know,
So it's not
It was
invasive.
fun learning about that in our conversation with Frank earlier this season.
I mean, those are exciting, and I think every day different companies pop up to address the need as requirements and situations change. New ones come up, so I look forward to learning about even more companies next session.
One of the things we're hearing, there was this big rise to go to e-commerce, and now it's almost like, let's go back to brick and mortar. People want to touch things.
Run away! It's so expensive.
People have been, in their homes and trapped up for so long. They want to touch and feel things, and so now there's almost this like return to getting hands-on product again. So it's an interesting cycle of things that's happening. One of the other trends that we're seeing with regards to kind of that retail experience is, people are wanting to chase demand a little bit more. They're wanting to go smaller on their units. They're wanting to respond to how their consumers are reacting to product. That creates some unique challenges, especially when it comes to manufacturing.
Most certainly. I mean, most manufacturing overseas is built on longer production runs being more efficient, shorter ones being less efficient. And so there's ways to address those in some ways with line setup. But I think it's also kind of a mindset shift with factories too, as if we can embrace going better, if you will, as an industry, if we can, do better and go better, then I think that factories will be more open to running smaller quantities, addressing demand and the size in these bite-sized chunks. It's not going to be every customer, but we've seen a huge rise in these kind of boutique brands, if you will, and we've seen a large adoption rate from a customer level. They're addressing niches that need to happen, and I think our industry goes through those cycles where they've kind of had enough of the Goliaths and they want to have uniqueness and some authenticity, and that some of these smaller brands bring. It's not that the big ones are, bad. They developed a wonderful business. They're actually really business savvy, but much like beer business has gone through, it was the Goliaths for a while, and then you had artisan beer, and the Goliaths are now recognized they've got to go buy these artisan beer brands because all the so many beer drinkers are looking for the artisan brews today. I think we're going through a little of that in our industry too. So I think it's exciting. We're seeing good new ideas coming to the table.
That's true. We love innovation here. Yeah. So, and then, something else that that's really starting to get on our horizon that I know we want to be addressing in season 3. There's a lot of talks around legislation coming to, get behind supply chain vulnerability, supply chain transparency, foster more sustainability, support some of the social human rights concerns. And there's a lot of varying opinions about this legislation. There's, is there a need for it? Is it the right people that are actually creating these rules? Do they really understand the full dynamics? What's that actually going to do to the overall industry? So there's a lot of challenging questions in this space. Yeah,
there's a lot of professionals in our industry, and I'm hopeful that our government will employ those professionals. Because it's a complicated landscape. I think policy making from a government level in business can be challenging. Certainly, we're already battling against so many things going on in our industry that I think sometimes legislation can just make it all the more difficult. But there are some cases where I think we're not going to fix our supply chain issues without government intervention, probably governments internationally and the intervention and maybe some policy shifts. People can re-wear their same black T-shirt over and over again, and I love our industry, but supply chain issues affect needed goods into the U.S.,
right?
Life-saving goods, critical goods, and so I know that there's some executive orders and some things taking place in that respect, but it's just the symptom of a much bigger issue. And we're part of that issue. And I think legislation or government intervention can help in that situation, because there's not a lot of good business fundamentals to fix the issue that we have where containers are in the wrong place.
Right.
There's not a bunch of trucking lines.
There's no incentive to go get them.
Yeah, they didn't want to go get them, bring them back. Who's paying for that? And so I think
now we're making new containers and things of that nature. Right?
I think there's just a lot of things that we have to fix in that respect. And so we'll see if some good policy making or government support can help us get through some of these things.
Well, I look forward to taking a deeper dive into that, into all of those areas, and among our conversations of continuing to look at technologies that are on the horizon, we're going to continue looking at our options with nearshoring, and of course, continue to learn more about what's happening in the area of sustainability in season 3. It has been really fun sharing with everybody our perspective on these global dynamics and how it's shaping trends in the apparel and fashion industry to date. And we definitely look forward to exploring more future conversations in season 3. There's more to come, so make sure to subscribe to stay apprised of the next season of Clothing Culture. Thank you for joining, Bret.
Thank you.